Welcome all to another episode of Roy's Podcast. Today we'll be with a very special guest, Mr. Sanger Rainsford. A round of applause for Mr. Rainsford.
Haha, yes. It's an honor to be here on Roy's podcast. I hope at least some of you know who I am, otherwise I'd just be a random fellow with no point being on here.
Well, for those of you who aren't aware, our guest was in a rather unusual experience. Yes, very unusual.
Unusual might be a bit of an understatement. I feel like dangerous and life-threatening would be a better way to describe it. An unfortunate initiation, morbid introduction, ravish realization, and straight into panic torture for 3 days.
Yes, all of that will be covered in this next few minutes as we ponder over your recent experience that shocked you and hopefully shocks a few of our listeners. But enough of introductions. Let's get started with the actual show, shall we?
Yes, that would be for the better.
To start, you say you are a hunter, yes? You've hunted all your life. That would be a total of a lot of animals killed. Tell me, what were you out doing in the sea? Perhaps you were experimenting with a new environment to hunt?
Oh dear no, I could never hunt out in the sea. It's far too slow and barren to be enjoyable. No, I was voyaging to the Amazon.
Oh, I've heard there are a couple of animals there.
Oh yes, quite a few. I was getting rather tired of what North America had to offer in terms of game. I'd been getting accustomed to the habits of the gnarly bears of the Northwest, crocodiles in the bayous of Louisiana, coyotes in the blistering deserts of Nevada. I heard a fellow down in Florida talk about his time in Brazil. Forests on forests on forest, all of it full of potential game. For someone like me, that sounded like pure heaven. One animal in particular had me really interested, the fabled jaguar. Fierce claws, adapted camouflage, a sharp hunter itself. It was a perfect match for the likes of me.
It all sounds rather interesting, and you must have been very excited to arrive on the shores, but let's move on to the actual experience. Mr. Rainford's situation started on the island in the Caribbean, did it not?
Yes, before that I was on my voyage to Brazil late at night when, I won't say how, but I was removed from the ship into the warm water, and I swam towards gunshots that I had heard in an unknown direction.
You were removed from the ship?
Yes. And then I swam onto the island where I'd heard the shots. It must have been at least half a mile or so, and upon reaching the shore I found a spot to rest and fainted from exhaustion.
There is our unfortunate initiation.
It is a very long story, so I'll skip past a lot of the details, but the next morning I continued to explore this island until night was starting to set, and I began to see lights and structures in the distance. Upon reaching this palatial chateau, as I like to describe it, I entered the mass doors to be greeted by a man of exquisite class. I'm telling you, wines, suits, grand halls, all the splendor one could like.
Very terrifying story this is.
We continued to converse about our careers as hunters. This guy was exceptional in his trade. He traveled the entire world, experienced every kind of hunt there was, no corner not reached. I'd always thought of myself as a master in the hunt, but he was on another level. Not the kind of hunter you'd expect to find in the middle of the Caribbean, owning his own personal island to himself and his assistant. And then he began to reveal a twist in his nature. The reason he had his island to himself was so that he could do something he wouldn't been able to do elsewhere. Murder.
I guess this is a terrifying story. You were situated on a deserted island in the hands of a murderer?
Words cannot express my thoughts for the next moments. Disarray, confusion, worry, distress. Okay, maybe they can describe my thoughts, but my point is that I was distressed. A lone and thoughtful night that was in the fine silk fabric of the bed sheets that I was allowed upon.
What happened the next morning? I presume this was when the 3 days of torture had happened?
Yes, I don't want to get into detail for my own sake. He hunted me like an animal for 3 days. A hunter became the hunted. Finally, his ego and my determination combined led to his defeat in the most dangerous game. I had come out victorious, and the population of the island was now 1. And here I am in the studio today.
Incredible. I wish we had more time to discuss the story in more detail, but we must move on to your thoughts, of course. What is a story without its lesson, without the roots of its incarnation? To you, as a hunter, how did it feel to be on the other side of the barrel?
All of my life, I've had no respect for the game that I hunt. Having killed so many, I've had no time to think about what the hunt actually meant, nor did I care. Finding myself as the game was an experience that I both wish upon everyone and at the same time wish that nobody experiences. While the island won't stop me from continuing my passion, I'll never forget what it meant to be hunted. A new world had been opened before my eyes. I genuinely felt feared for my life and legitimately suffered from what the hunter called a game. Never will I forget.
Yes, I've never hunted myself, but I think I can understand what you're saying. You were forcefully put into a position of that you looked down upon and had to feel that experience at the possible expense of your life.
Precisely. It's a very simple topic that needs few words to explain, yet a powerful one.
Well, that just about wraps up the time we have with Mr. Rainsford. It was a great pleasure to have you on the show to talk about your experience, and I really hope that you recover swiftly, both physically and mentally. Todsins.